Good day everyone, Criminals here with another DCS video, and today I want to do a little bit more flying in the HS-37 Viggen. The Viggen is one of my favorite planes in DCS ever since it came out, and I flew it a lot lately. And especially in this video I want to make a short demonstration about the Viggen's capability to land and operate from roads. Explain a bit where that ability comes from and do a quick mission to demonstrate it. Now, during the early stages of the Cold War, there was a concern by many nations that in a possible future Third World War, the large air bases with the long runways would be very vulnerable, and most likely the first target of the opposition. And that makes sense. During the last large war, World War II, the propeller planes used could easily operate from grass strips and relatively short runways, which were easy to fix after an attack. But with the rapid development of jets and supersonic fighters in the 50s and 60s being designed as fast interceptors, you now had planes with very high wing loading and swept wings which had a very high stall speed and needed long concrete runways to land and start on. One possible countermeasure to that problem was the development of planes that could start and land vertically, and many countries developed prototypes of such VTOL fighters. However, with the notable exception of the X-38 and of course the Harrier, which we get to fly in DCS soon, most of them stayed prototypes. In most cases, the trade-off required for a vertical takeoff and landing were considered to be too high, especially for countries with smaller air forces that could not afford large numbers of an expensive plane for such a very specialized role. And that was also the conclusion the Swedish designers and armed forces came to. Another solution for this problem was to give the fighters short takeoff and landing capabilities, which is easier to do than vertical takeoff and landing and does not have the same impact on the plane's performance. That way the impact of damaged runways could be reduced, and it opened up the use of roads or highways as improvised landing strips. That way the planes can be dispersed on a number of improvised hidden airfields and operate from there, where they were safer from enemy air attack. And the Viggen has this short takeoff and landing capability, with a very low landing speed for a fighter of its era. It was specifically designed to operate from roads, and many roads in Sweden were also designed to handle a fighter in an emergency for that reason. And in the DCS version, the Viggen of course also has this capability. Now, landing on a road and starting from it is quite cool, but if you really want to operate from a hidden road airbase, you need more than that. Specifically, you need the ability to rearm and refuel at a set hidden airbase. Now, back when the Viggen first entered early access and I made my first videos of it, that was a bit difficult to do, limiting the value of the Viggen's short takeoff and landing capabilities. But Heatblur has since addressed this issue and introduced a mobile ground crew for the Viggen, which you can place on your desired improvised landing strip or even send them from place to place if you want to operate from different temporary bases. That is a really nice addition, and one I hope gets expanded on and maybe even used in other modules as well. The upcoming Harrier, for example, would also benefit greatly from a system like that. In any case, in order to use the mobile ground crew, you need a vehicle group that consists of 3 vehicles, an unarmed one for command, a fuel truck and a transport truck for weapons. And then you just name the lead vehicle ground crew as a unit name, and voila, you have a ground crew you can command via the Viggen's kneeboard. We take a look at that when we rearm on our little runway in the woods. The addition of that ground crew allows you to use everything as airbase you are brave enough to land and take off from. In reality, the roads used for this in Sweden and other countries were usually specifically reinforced. I just pretend the roads I use here are as well. Well, with those basics explained, let's take a look at our little demonstration mission to see a little bit of that in action. Now, since this is a demonstration mission, it is quite simple. We are taking off from a normal airfield unarmed, Shukumi in this case, and we are tasked to proceed to a hidden forward airfield called runway 18, about 100 kilometers to the southeast, hidden in the woods north of Senaki, in order to disperse our fighters in case of an air attack on the airfield. When we arrive at the forward airfield, we are to rearm and refuel and start operating from said airfield, meaning we fly an attack mission on a target and then return to our base. We have the coordinates for our first target already in the computer, loaded from the data cartridge. Our improvised airfield where we're heading first though was not on the data cartridge, so I had to input it in the Viggen's computer manually, which I did before I started the engine. Manually designating landing bases in the computer is easy enough to do though. The same like inputting waypoints. You switch the computer to Rev Lola mode and type in the coordinates from the landing field, which you get from the F10 map, and hit L-Mal button to save it as the coordinates of the landing field. Now the computer knows where the landing strip is and the Viggen's nav system can get you there, which is quite useful. I generally pick roads that provide concealment to the plane and the ground crew like a forest. That's the point of the exercise after all. That also means that those landing strips are often hard to find yourself. After inputting their coordinates, you can switch the computer to Banach and input the runway heading there. That's important because otherwise the system can't show you the runway heading on the screen. At the same time, you can also input the channel for the Swedish Tactical Instrument Landing System, if the airport has one, but our improvised runway does not. The TIL system the Viggen uses was also designed to be mobile though. I hope the mobile ground crew can eventually also be set up as Tactical Instrument Landing System transmitter, so you can use the TILs on road bases as well, but at the moment I think you can't. In any case, we continue for a few more minutes in the direction of the B1 waypoint, which is close to the improvised airbase, and as we are about to reach it, we get ready to land on the hidden base. The first thing I do is set the barometric altimeter for the elevation of the road, to get proper altitude readings during the landing. If you have a preset waypoint for the location of this hidden base in the data cartridge, you can get the QFE settings, the air pressure for it, from the kneeboard, but we don't. We manually put in the coordinates. And we don't have a live weather report in DCS that could give us this information during the mission, so we have to improvise a little bit. What I do is get the QFE by calculating it from the QFE I do have. In this case, one from my starting base, where I had the QFE setting of 1012 millibar. The road base is about 60 meters higher and 1 millibar is about 9 meters. So we set the QFE to roughly 106.5 millibar. Now that can be inaccurate if there is a pressure difference because it is in a different location, but for this purpose it is good enough. We also press the L-Mal button on the navigation system to activate the landing base waypoint and activated the auto throttle system, which helps a lot when landing in tight quarters. Now you can also see a circle on the radar that is representing the hidden airfield, and the line extending from it is the runway heading, which we entered into the system at startup. The heading of the road we plan to land on is 183 degrees, so of course I want to approach the hidden base while heading 183 degrees to be lined up with the runway to land on. The line on the radar screen helps with that, but is not strictly necessary, if you know the runway heading, like you should. In this case it is 183 degrees and the orange marker on the compass around the radar shows the heading to the waypoint, which is our airbase. We want that to coincide with 183 degrees on the compass when we turn towards the waypoint, and then we are heading straight for the runway. That is why I did not directly fly to the waypoint, of course, but to the left of it, till I was in a position to line up the runway. Our waypoint marker gets closer to 183, so I start a slow turn towards the waypoint now. By now I have extended the landing gear and I activated the 15-degree AOA mode for the auto throttle system, which provides a higher angle of attack and therefore slower landing speed. I also start to visual scan for the road, but I can't see it yet. I specifically picked the spot to be hidden in a forest, so that it is hard to spot from the air. That goes for me as well as for the enemy, of course. And the reason why you want to properly set the coordinates of such an airbase in your navigation system. I'm still a bit far out, so I pull a bit to slow my descent rate. The auto throttle system automatically increases the throttle to keep AOA of 50 degrees, though I still get a few high AOE warnings as I land. You want to be a bit careful with that, not to overdo it, because the Viggen's engine can surge at a too high angle of attack, and the auto throttle system can't use the afterburner, limiting its acceleration. I also activate the thrust reverser, so I don't forget to do it later. It should activate automatically after the gear is fully on the ground and provide the necessary extra braking power. Forgetting it is a bad idea. Now, with the waypoint marker now almost in line with the desired 183 degrees, I turn towards the airbase and put the master mode selector switch to visual landing. Again, the base does not have a TIL system, so no use using it. And I continue to look for the road of my improvised base. The angle of attack making that a little bit harder. There is also a tree line concealing the approach end of the road from that angle until you are a bit closer. Now my navigation system tells me that I'm only a few more kilometers away from the road I want to land on, but since I still can't see the road, I fear I am getting a bit below the glide slope, and again I pull a bit on the stick to reduce my rate of descent. But after a bit of that, I finally spot the stretch of road that is my airbase. And I am, as a matter of fact, even a little bit too high. I know from the map that the road is not entirely straight all the way, by the way. There's a slight bend at the approach end of the road, and I want to set down just where the bend begins to have the longest straight line of road ahead of me possible here. That should give me about 800 meters of road to slow down, which is well within the capabilities of the Viggen, using its thrust reverse, which is again why you want to make sure the thrust reverser is on. Now, with the road in sight, all you have to do is place the flight path indicator at the point you want to land and keep it there. And make sure your rate of descent at touchdown is not too hard, though the Viggen's heavy-duty landing gear can take a bit of force. And we are down. Now, with the gear firmly on the ground, the thrust reverser pedals close and we can bow up a bit again to use it to brake. And use the wheel brakes as needed as well, though in this case the thrust reverser alone should be enough to slow down. So we arrived at runway 18, our hidden airbase. So it is time for phase 2 of this mission, get some bombs and blow something up. So my mobile ground crew should be waiting in cover of some trees a bit further down this road at the start of a little village there. So we continue to taxi down the road a bit, and here they are, a command vehicle, a fuel truck and a transport truck, our ground crew, protected by some tanks and ready to rearm our plane for our mission. In order to do so, we use a little menu that was added to the Viggen's kneeboard, though from how I understand it, this is a temporary solution and Heatblur plans to replace this with a more advanced dedicated UI for the ground crew. But in any case, the way you do it now is to use the key commands in the kneeboard to select what loadout and fuel quantity you want and then enter to get the ground crew to work. I pick high drag bombs in this case, which is my favorite weapon for the Viggen since you can drop them from such low altitude. And as you can see, the weapons start to appear on my plane. Now, another thing you can do, which is really nice on the kneeboard menu, is to decide if the ground crew is supposed to stay here at this position or move to a different base after rearming you, in case you want to use another base next time. In order to do so, you have to input the coordinates of the new landing site into your Viggen's computer first, so that the ground crew knows where the base is supposed to be. And when this is done, you change the option in the ground crew's kneeboard menu from remain in place to move to a new location. Then the ground crew should start to move to the new base as soon as they are done reloading your plane. We won't do this here though, we return to the same base. Now, while we are on the ground, I also set up some things for my attack run afterwards. First, I change waypoint 3's type to a target waypoint, because that's where our target is, a helicopter base by the way. And then I already set the QFE for the target's altitude, so I don't forget to do it later, since that has a massive impact on the bomb's accuracy. This time I don't need to get the QFE myself though, since waypoint 3 was in the data storage to begin with, I can get the QFE simply from the kneeboard. Well, now we are reloaded and ready to go, which leaves us with one last thing to do here, which can be a bit tricky: turning the plane around. There is no suitable place to start in front, so we have to go back to where we landed. However, going off-road to do so is a bad idea, since you can easily get stuck in the mud. So we want to have at least half of our plane still on the road at all times while turning around, to prevent from getting stuck. Luckily, the Viggen is one of the few fighters that can use its thrust reverse to go backwards. A neat little trick, and very useful if you want to turn the plane around in tight quarters. Make sure you are careful with the brakes though when you go backwards, since it is easy to flip the plane on its engine nozzle if you use the wheel brakes when going backwards too fast. In general, it's better to use the engine itself to slow down backwards motion, I would say. So we have to go forwards and backwards a bit to get the plane turned around on the narrow road without getting it stuck in the dirt. But eventually that's done too, and then we are on our way to the starting location to get on with our mission, which is bombing a small helicopter base to the southwest end of Kutaisi, followed by returning to our little hidden base. But of course, before we can do so, we need to get this plane back in the air. In order to do so, I taxi back to the straight line where I initially landed, as it provides a nice long location to start. So here we are. There is however a tree line at the end of the road which we need to get over after takeoff. So I turn full afterburner on and off we go. I plan to accelerate till the slight bend in the road at the end and then take off with a lot of speed, which should give us more than enough speed to get over the tree line a bit further back. And it does, and we are in the air again, now carrying a lot of bombs. Our target is to the northeast of our current location, and we will first go towards waypoint 2, which sets us up for a nice attack along the tarmac of the little helicopter base at waypoint 3. As usual, we fly into enemy territory and our attack run at low level and in stage 1 afterburner, which with our current loadout gives us a speed of between Mach 0.7 and Mach 0.9, depending on how much maneuvering you do. Considering all the bombs and 2 missiles we are carrying, this is quite fast. We could go supersonic even with this heavy loadout in full stage 3 afterburner at this low level, but that of course also leads to a much higher fuel consumption and would also be too fast to drop the parachute delayed high drag bombs effectively. So we keep the plane in stage 1 afterburner till higher speed is really needed, to evade SAMs for example. Now, coming up on the target, we put the trigger to unsafe, which gets us the drop symbology, and drop a stick of bombs on the tarmac of the heli base, and the helicopter's parked there, and then we are on our way back to rearm. Which doesn't take long, and we are back for our second landing at forward base runway 18. This time I line the runway up slightly different, coming more from the left, which lets me spot the road from a bit further out, which helps with a smoother landing this time. Otherwise everything works like the first time around, and we are soon back on the ground with new weapons and ready for the next target. This way you can attack quite a few targets without ever returning to a real airbase, which I think is quite cool. I have to say though that from what I have heard, this system is still a bit buggy in multiplayer, but Heatblur said they would further improve the system and hopefully its multiplayer compatibility as well. Well, and this is it for this little Viggen road-based demonstration. As always, I hope it was informative, thanks for watching and maybe I'll see you next time.